Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and dopamine. Hello, welcome to Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Jess Wozniak.
And I'm Bree Fagan.
And we are here to deliver some dopamine this week. Week 5.
5 whole weeks.
Unbelievable.
And people have listened to it now.
They really have.
Yeah.
They like us. You like us.
You really like us.
One thing I don't feel like we've addressed very well. We talked a little bit in our first episode about how we feel about ADHD and why we're doing this podcast. Mm-hmm. And we kind of joked that it's because we're funny, which isn't a joke, it's true.
Absolutely.
But I think it's really important to point out, and we don't do this a lot because it gets all serious and stuff, but I think it's really important to point out that for us, this is about working with our ADHD instead of just fighting against it.
Instead of just surviving with it.
Yeah.
Trying to do something that works with it and is actually enhancing, adding to our lives and bringing joy to our lives, and not just being defeating and hard and tough all the time. There's a lot of internet, especially with TikTok and all of the knowledge about ADHD that's going around. A lot of, ADHD is my superpower. Like, yeah, okay, but also sometimes it sucks.
It's
there are
so
downsides.
hard. Yeah.
And it's hard to just feel like your brain's broken all the time. Like,
yes.
People are out there just doing their jobs and like doing what they're supposed to do and getting things done, and they just do it. It's just easy for them, and some weeks it's just so hard and draining just to get through the week or get through a day. And it makes me sad that other people don't have to fight that every day.
Definitely. And I think that, personally, I think my ADHD is a part of me. It makes up some of my personality. Mm-hmm. I've always been called, spunky, and I'm sure I've been called several mean things, too, because of my ADHD. But I've also been told things, and I'm not bragging, but things like, when I come into a room, I bring energy with me. And that's incredible. Once again, I'm not trying to brag. It's just such a nice thing to hear. And
it's true.
Aw, heart. So I think it's really important to embrace that about ourselves. It's almost like losing an appendage. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the most attractive appendage. But if we cut it off, we would lose ourselves. And that's not to say we shouldn't medicate or we should deal with it how we have to. But I want this podcast for us, I think that's what we both want, to be like a trophy of how far we've come in 30-some years to beat to work with our ADHD, because beating it is not
to
what
our
we want.
Advantage.
Yes.
It's, getting here was hard. It took 30 years. But, setting the time aside and learning the things that we had to learn to even be able to get to this stage. But we made it through all of that, and now we just, I have a hard time stopping once I get into these topics, and it's bringing joy to my life.
Yes.
I'm excited to learn these things. I'm learning a bunch of new stuff. Sometimes it's just like, I've always really wanted to learn about this. Now I have an excuse.
Yes.
And it feels good.
It feels amazing. And I've always sat back personally, and people talk about, do the job you love and do the things you love. And I sit there and I'm like, but I like video games and I like sleeping and I hyperfixate and I like, fill in the blank, whatever specific thing I love at the time. Because I do love all of them all the time, but I will fixate on one or two of them at a time. And it's always been hard to figure out how do I do what I love. But this is it. Like, this
Yeah.
is me talking about things that interest me and that I love. And we get to hang out.
Right.
Which is a huge perk.
And especially as adults. Like,
Yes.
how often do adults get to go hang out with their best friend for a couple hours pretty much every week?
Just talking.
Yeah. And calling it productive.
Exactly.
My husband can't even be mad. I'm like, oh, I'm going to Jessica's because we have to record. It's not like, oh, I'm going to just go hang out at Jessica's and you have to deal with everything. It's like, I'm doing something productive and also giving myself dopamine. And hopefully
amazing.
giving others dopamine too.
And we've had such epic support from people.
Yes.
I think it speaks to working with your ADHD that so many people are like, it's like we're sitting there having a conversation with you guys, and I love that.
Yes, that's exactly how I wanted it to feel, that we're just hanging out with people and sharing what we know. I think for me, this particular idea, this making it a podcast, started, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago there was like an internet Pinterest suggestion where friends would get together and like make PowerPoint presentations for each other. And I remember sending it to you, and both of us were stoked about that idea. Like, the idea that I would just make a PowerPoint about anything I loved and get up in front of all my friends and talk about it for 30 minutes, for some reason super appeals to me. And now we get to do that. Minus the PowerPoint. But maybe we'll add those.
And let's be honest, the PowerPoint was the least appealing part. Because
I really like PowerPoint.
Do you? I haven't done it in a
love
long
PowerPoints.
time. We use them for work, but I don't have to make them.
Oh, right.
But I do, strangely enough, follow someone on TikTok who makes them.
And I could not tell you the last time I had to make a PowerPoint. Right. Even with all of the jobs I have, I do not make PowerPoints anymore. I don't know why. Maybe I'll start. I'm going to start.
You should. Absolutely. We can post them on your realtor page.
Yes.
So, anyway, just a quick break from our silliness, our topics, our sometimes nonsense, just to speak on that and encourage you to do the same thing. If you fight ADHD, or frankly, if you fight anything that is a part of you, see what you can do to work with it. It might not come to you for 30 years, because this did not come to us for 30 years. And we don't have any, sure, if it takes off and we become professional podcasters, all the better.
Great.
But it's, for us, I think it's more of like a hobby cast.
Yeah.
And that makes us happy. And we've brought dopamine to others who've told us that we're making them happy too.
And it's important as adults to set the time aside and figure out something that makes you happy and that you have passion for, and work with whatever your strengths are to make it happen, because this is totally worth it.
Absolutely. This is so much fun. And even if we find that we don't have a lot to say going on in our lives, we always can talk about this.
Yes.
So just a timeout of encouragement and a little bit more reason for us being on the podcast besides just we're funny.
Because
Which
we
is
are
also
funny.
true. Yeah. So now that we've gotten the sappy stuff out of the way, I'm going to dive into some more folklore or folklore. Because last week's episode was better than folklore. Dang it, now I can't say it wrong.
Folklore.
Not at all.
Definitely better than folklore.
We're not going to set the bar that high. Better than meth, we're better than methane, we're better than murder, but we are not better than folklore. So, before I dive in, I am going to just throw this out there. If you like this folklore and you like stories, you should once again check out How to Survive Camping by Bonnie Quinn. They are a little odd. I started rereading them. I, in fact, purchased the hard copies of the books because I appreciated her and I wanted to show that appreciation. So I purchased the books, but you can read them for free. And I did realize that they're a little strange to read through because they were originally short Reddit posts. So bear with them. The story is great, totally worth it.
And if you do, I bought the first one on Amazon Kindle, and it was relatively cheap. I want to say $3 or something.
Yes.
And she does preface it in the books that this started as a Reddit post, and so some of it, she did change some things that maybe wouldn't have made sense without the comments from the Reddit post, so she included those into the story, but she kept everything important exactly the same. She comments on how it might read a little strange because of that, but even the first chapter that I read was pretty good already.
And also, it makes for really good, like, short reads. So if you think you're going to be sitting in, like, a doctor's office or in your car waiting for the kid to get out of sports or something, you can just read a few chapters and feel satisfied. You won't feel like you have to keep going. And looking at you, Sarah J. Maas.
You don't have to stay up until 3 a.m. finishing that book, even though you have to work tomorrow.
Your eyes don't need to be on fire. Anywho, folklore. Folklore. So today I'm specifically focusing on English folklore, which is really fun, and you are going to see a lot of movie and story tie-ins, specifically Harry Potter. But now that I've said that, the first one is Brave,
which is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, so good. Love it. Anyway, okay, yes. So, I was going to tangent, but we've already gone pretty far. So, the first creature in English folklore are the will-o'-the-wisps, which are also called fairy fire or death candles, which is a little bit more foreboding. And the will-o'-the-wisps, such as in Brave, are often known for leading people places. They can be either benevolent or malevolent. And oftentimes are typically more malevolent. They can work with other evil creatures. They can also, depending on if you respect them or not.
There's that respect thing again.
I always gotta bring it together. They might lead you maybe to treasure or out of danger. So if you're lost in the woods, or they might lead you to a hidden treasure chest or something along those lines. Most times they're just going to lead you to painful death. But I'm
very disappointed in that, because I am definitely the type of person that would follow the lights.
Which you are not supposed to do.
I am not supposed to do.
If you even started reading the How to Survive Camping stories, it says don't follow the lights.
Like the very first page, and I was like, oh no. I would die so quickly if fairies were real. They'd be like, watch this. I'd be like, oh, shiny.
Look at that light, guys.
There's another one. And another one. And then I'd never be seen again.
Maybe the ones that would find you would be like, she's so cute, and they would accept you into their fairy lives.
It's kind of how I live my entire life.
Yeah.
You know, being short and tiny, I just assume as long as I can come off as cute,
you're safe.
Somebody will always love me.
Fair enough. I like it. I think you're cute, and I like you, so.
See, it's been working for at least 30 years.
Yeah. Granted, I don't, in my free time, lead people into danger either, so.
I appreciate that.
You know?
I feel like this is why this friendship works.
Why, I haven't been in jail or anything yet.
You've never led me into danger.
So far. There's still time. Just let me figure out how. Let's visit the Bermuda Triangle.
All right. We'll follow the lights there.
Yes. Perfection. So, one thing I did notice in English folklore is they have a bone to pick with black dogs. There are several black dogs in folklore. So I don't know if there was like an epic epidemic. An epic epidemic. I always find most epidemics to be epic.
Truly.
Okay. Anywho, an epidemic of like black wolves that were rabid or something. But there's a lot. So, number one, the bar guest. He's a huge black dog, and he preys on lone travelers. If he feels you're getting in his way of his prey, he will strike out and attack you with his paw, and your wound will never heal. So that's fun.
Oh boy.
And if you are the target of one and you see him, you will die later. Mm-hmm. So that very much reminds me of Harry Potter.
Yes,
with the tea leaves.
The Grim.
Yes, exactly. Now this one you should be super familiar with. If you're not, I'm going to give you disadvantage rolls on our entire next playthrough of D&D. And that is because these are red caps.
I do remember the red caps.
Yes, very good. I'm glad for that. You guys actually have the name of a red cap who you can call upon because you guys were beating the crap out of them and the fight was going on forever. So I DM'd and I made a new rule.
We need that sometimes.
Hey, it might have been my fault. Maybe I made them too hard and gave you too many of them. But regardless. So the red caps, as you know, wear red hats. Mm-hmm. They're kind of gnomish, but never, ever, ever think of them as gnomes. They typically hang out at the scenes of bad stuff like fires or murders. And if you get too close, they will attack you. They have sharp teeth, they wear iron boots, and they have long, sharp nails. They also carry a pipe staff to fight with. Now, the reason they are red caps, you should know this as well. You're nodding, so you remember.
I was going to see if you were going to throw that in there.
Absolutely. So they dip their caps into the blood of their victims to make them red. So the redder they are, the meaner they are.
Gross.
Yeah. And this I did not know, actually. They cannot let their caps dry.
Oh, yeah. Yucky.
Yeah. I
so
imagine
they just
the
wear,
smell.
Oh, I don't want to think about it anymore. Just wear wet.
So let me go deeper in it. So yeah, they're really... Ugh. Now this next one is really fun. I say that. I mean it. I'm sorry that I mean it. This is a folklore called Hairy Hands. It's been around since 1910. There's a stretch of road, it's a very remote area in Dartmoor, in the English county of Devon. Mm-hmm. I'm not English, so that was a bit tricky for me. I don't know why.
Those words don't make sense in the United States.
They're all totally typical words, too. But maybe it's just me. It's probably not. But,
no. Couldn't be.
Maybe if I said it with an accent, it would have been easier.
Absolutely.
So, the reason this is an issue is because there's this one stretch of road has a high number of accidents. So, Hairy Hands is known to take control of your wheel to cause accidents. Sometimes a carriage, sometimes a motorcycle. In 1924, a woman was camping with her husband, said she saw a set of hands trying to get into her tent.
Ooh.
And it left when she made the sign of the cross, which is super creepy.
Right? How did the hands know she made the sign of the cross?
Oh, good question. They are just hands. They're not called hairy eyes. You'll have to get a hold of her. Mm-hmm. I'm sure
she's probably totally still alive.
Absolutely.
It was only 99 years ago.
And she was definitely camping with her husband.
So she was already an adult. Totally reasonable.
Yes, I think so. We'll give her a call. Some people do report seeing the hands on their wheel. Just hands. Others just say that they struggle as if someone has a hold of their wheel to keep
Oh my gosh.
You keep the wheel going. I'm
the wheel
using my
straight.
hands again, like anyone can see it.
She has been working the steering wheel the entire time she's been talking about it.
Also, when I told this to Ryan, he asked me to clarify if it was hairy hands like hair, or hairy like Harry, like the man. They're just...
Like somebody knew they belonged to a man named Harry.
I like to picture that they have Harry tattooed across the knuckles. So, I thought I'd throw that in.
I'm picturing, like, Thing from the Addams Family.
Yes.
And how he drives. And it's just these hands.
See, that's proof that the hands need no eyes, because Thing was fine.
That's true.
So, we've debunked that theory.
Yeah. Good job.
We did it. This next one, you have to be careful on pronunciation. And her name is Black Annis. And she is a hag that lives in a cave. There's an oak tree outside of her cave where she hangs the skins of children that she steals from their homes through the windows.
Okay.
So when she was well known, she would steal the babies from the windows. So in that time period, you can see a lot of homes that built their windows much smaller. And they would have also covered their windows with things like skins of animals and things like that, because they wanted to protect their children, clearly. And this Black Annis would let you know she's coming by howling, because you could hear that from about 5 miles away and know that you needed to, like, close up the windows and stuff. She's obviously a terrible killer. Why would you let people know you're coming?
Right.
I got
She
some
must not
tips
be
for
that
you.
hungry.
No.
She's warning everybody.
She's nothing like hairy hands. The silent hairy hands.
They
Nobody
just
knew.
Appear and turn your wheel and ruin your life.
Yeah. No howling.
Not Black Annis.
No.
She'll let you know.
She lets you know.
It's your fault if you don't protect your children.
You don't love your
told
children. So,
Isn't anise some sort of it's like a medicine or an herb or something?
I think so. I know they use it in black licorice.
Oh, yep. That's
And
right.
I think Jaeger.
Mm-hmm. Because that tastes like black licorice.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Gross. Ryan loves black licorice, and I don't know what's wrong with him. But
And you married him?
I know. I was young.
True.
I was 10 years
Years
younger.
ago, we were still young. We are still young.
Yeah. Come on.
Totally.
Get it together. So the next one is very broad. And this is the White Lady. And this ghost can be anywhere, but she is always seen in white, usually a white dress. They're always like time period-y. Apparently when you die, you must dress in old-timey clothes. Forever. So this is a woman who was killed by betrayal or suicide and had a very tragic backstory. One of the most famous is Anne Boleyn.
Mm-hmm.
And the White Ladies will stay wherever they were killed or nearby. They can sometimes move to like a home that was really important to them. But there are several of them. There's definitely more than one. So she's kind of broad, but she's not a large lady. She's just, there's more than one of them and they're everywhere.
She's kind of broad.
She's a chunky lady. There's nothing wrong with that. We are size inclusive here at Dungeons and Dopamine.
Yes.
Anyway, there's also the Apple Tree Man.
What?
He is not broad. The apple tree man is said to be two different things. The stories kind of compete with each other. He is either a little old man who lives in the oldest tree in the field, or he is, in fact, the oldest tree in the field that has become sentient.
So this is not Paul Bunyan, then?
This is not Paul Bunyan.
Different apple tree man.
Yes, exactly. So to appease the apple tree man, you will pour cider onto its roots once a year. And if you do so, he will protect your orchard. If you take him off, he can do a couple things, like kill the trees in your orchard, or he won't protect you in your orchard. There was one story about a cat that was in the tree. And the apple tree man told him, you have to go, there's going to be danger here. And the cat couldn't leave soon enough. But the apple tree man liked the cat. It came and hung out in its branches and gave him company every day. So at that time, a battle went through the field, and the apple tree man saved the kitty.
Aw.
Yay.
I like the apple tree man.
I do too. Just give him some cider. He's a happy dude.
I get it. I want cider sometimes too.
Absolutely. I'd prefer no one poured it on me, but like...
I'll take it how I get it.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
If that's the only way you can get it to me, then fine.
That's fine. Yeah. I like cider.
Mm-hmm.
This next one you'll definitely know is familiar, and those are boggarts.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also called boggles. So these boggarts are different than your Harry Potter boggarts. They're a boogeyman. They are found in or around farms, and they typically just cause mischief. They will latch onto your family. So if your family moves into the farm, and they'll do things like sour milk or knock over pails of dust after you sweep and stuff like that. But if you move away, whether to get away from them or just because you gotta go, they will follow you.
Oh, good.
They're attached to you at that point.
You've created a new family member.
Exactly. Just a naughty, like, toddler, basically.
Great.
Yeah.
That's what I always wanted.
Oh, yes. A permanent
perpetual
toddler.
that I can't see.
Exactly.
That just causes mischief. Mm-hmm.
Probably at the worst times, too.
Of course.
Now, as boggarts age, if they haven't found a family, they can turn very violent. And these boggarts will typically live in caves or marshes. They kidnap children and are violent. So we want to avoid those.
So maybe you should invite a boggart to stay with you so that it doesn't eat children.
Yeah.
You're really doing the world a service.
Or if you hate your children.
I mean,
2 birds, 1 stone.
Boggart, get. You have to go live in this cave. I will not cover the window to my children's rooms, just saying.
No. The Black Annis is terrible. She's horrible at this. Boggart, if you hear her howl, just close the windows, okay? It's perfect. The next one is actually really cute. They're called knockers. I believe in America we call them Tommy knockers. Okay. And I believe that there's a really creepy movie about them, but I have no idea.
I want to say it's a Stephen King thing.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. These ones I don't think are like that at all.
Stephen King was never my cup of tea.
I read it.
You did?
I did, and I regretted it. It wasn't a great book. The movie's fine.
I've never seen that movie.
I haven't seen the miniseries.
There was like a 4-book that he had of mini stories, and I read that, and the only one I remember out of it is the Langoliers, and they were the weird little, like, they devoured everything they came in contact to, so they were like slowly devouring the world. I don't know.
Huh. It's very Galactus of them.
Yeah.
Anywho.
Yeah.
So the knockers are small creatures who live in mines. They are helpful if the miners respect them.
Everybody's so concerned about being respected.
I know. It's like, why should I? What have you done for me? Right. But it's actually what they will do for you later.
Oh, okay.
So if you offer them little things like little treats or little not sacrifices. No.
They do not need children.
They do not. I hope. Not in my research. Basically, you offer them little stuff. Mm-hmm. They will help the miners by knocking on the walls and warning them if the tunnel is about to collapse. However, if you tick them off, they might collapse it on purpose.
Oh.
So you gotta be good to them.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes another black dog. Please forgive me if I'm saying this one wrong. The guy trash. And this is normally in the shape of a black dog, but he can shapeshift into a donkey, a wolf, or a crane. And he's very much like the will-o'-the-wisps. Sometimes benevolent, sometimes malevolent. You can usually tell when he's malevolent because his eyes are glowing red like embers.
Mm-hmm.
But he leads you wherever he feels like at the moment, which is to danger, away from danger, to treasure, away from harm, out of being lost, etc. Mm-hmm. They have a very similar story.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I would know not to follow a dog with red eyes.
I'm really glad to hear that. That makes me worry about you a lot less.
Yes.
Especially since you live in the woods.
True. But I will probably follow the lights. Just saying.
I don't think you should have Halloween parties anymore.
Could be fun.
I could tell by your face. You were like, no, I don't agree with that.
No, totally going forward.
This guy is one of my favorites. He's called Spring Heel Jack. He's a tall, thin phantom. It's said that he has long claws and red eyes. It's said that he wears a black cloak. And some stories have said that he breathes blue flames. He was fond of scaring young women and coachmen.
Okay.
A lot of people searched for him, but no one ever found him. Personally, I like to think that this is like Batman if he'd never had like the Joker to balance him out. He was just bored and he was like, I'm gonna go scare that coachman. And he put on his cloak and he boogie boogie boo. And the coachman screamed and then Spring Heel ran away and he was in like a restaurant or something.
Bat cave.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm, his heel cave.
Yes, his heel cave.
I just like to think this is like a bored millionaire, not actually some sort of spook or phantom. And then, of course, the people who were embarrassed by him made up stories like that he had red eyes and breathed fire and stuff because they were embarrassed that some guy had peeked into their coach and been like, "Coach, you sleeping?" And then so I don't know why, but he's one of my favorites.
All right, he's just a goof. He's just messing with people.
He's my kind of guy. I like that, and he's tall and slim, so
right.
He is my kind of guy.
Definitely your type.
I also really like the flame breathing.
I mean, who wouldn't?
I've always had a thing for dragon men. So, our next one is the brown man of the moors, and he's dwarfish, and he's a guardian of the animals.
Oh.
The story goes that he made a deal with two men, and he told them, I'll spare you if you do not shoot any more animals. And the men agreed, and they left, and one of the men went out hunting for dinner. Mm. And from the moment he pulled the trigger, he was very ill. So they do say that the brown men of the moors aren't as common any longer because we're expanding as humans and taking over more of the land that they're supposed to be protecting. So they've been diminished, but that they're still out there, which I kind of like. Of course, you also have a mermaid.
Of course.
This is one of my favorites, only for the fact that I put something in my notes that I can't get enough of. So mermaids are pretty much what you typically think of, Little Mermaid, except they are a sign of bad luck.
Okay.
If they saw them from a ship, it would often lead to bad weather. There are also the rare tales of them being like a siren, where they lure men into the water. So what I have in my notes is Mermurder.
Did you write that? And then giggle for 5 minutes.
I did write that. Absolutely.
Mermurder.
And then that night while I was talking to Ryan about it, I told him, and he did not laugh nearly enough.
Ryan.
I know. I'm
So
very disappointed.
disappointed.
I don't have a ton on mermaids, but I did have to share that because of Mermurder. Perhaps
Sounds like a problem.
Perhaps this
Mermurder is a
episode needs
problem.
to be better than Mermurder.
We are definitely better than Mermurder.
Absolutely better.
I mean,
than
we already
Mermurder.
proved we're better than murder,
Yeah,
but Mermurder.
exactly. We got this. The next one you will definitely recognize, and that is a Grindilo.
Yes.
These are, like, think of like Swamp Man. They're aquatic. They're green and scaly with sharp claws, and they like to pull people down in the water and drown them. It's unknown why they drown them. It's not known whether they eat them or they just do it for funsies or like to protect their plot of water.
Quit splashing around over here.
This is a peaceful community. We have an HOA.
This is outside quiet hours.
Exactly. They were probably furious when Harry Potter was in there.
Yeah,
Get
kicking
out.
around, dragging people around.
They stuck these people in the bottom of the lake.
Gosh.
Get them out. We can't even drown them. This next one is very similar to the Knockers, but they wear little blue flame hats, and they help the miners if the miners give them a full day's wage. What you're supposed to do is leave that as an offering in the cave at night and then leave. And the next morning, that will be gone. And these little blue flames will lead you to mineral deposits in the walls or sometimes treasure. They will not help you if you do not pay them wages. And if you leave more than a day's wage, they will not take it. They will only take what is a fair day's wage.
They're just looking for fair and honest work.
Exactly. They got to keep those little blue flame caps nice and tidy. So I like them a lot. I think they're really cute. If you look them up online, at least the photos I saw were adorable.
Really?
I really liked them. They can get violent as per everything if you do not leave them their day's wage. This next one showed up first in Shakespeare's writings, and he's called Heron the Hunter.
Okay.
He's, I feel like, pretty popular. He's pretty well known. He's said to have antlers growing from his head. He rides a large horse. Sometimes he'll torment cattle. Why? I don't know.
Because he's a horse.
I guess so. A
deer?
ghost? Yeah, I don't know. He's a dude with antlers. And he rattles chains. He's said to be able to cause decay. So if he touches a tree, he can kill it. And he's also said to be able to make your cattle produce blood, not milk.
Oh, gross.
Ugh.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's also said that he may have been the original Wild Hunt leader. If you've played Witcher 3, there's a whole expansion on the Wild Hunt. It's really interesting, really good. If you play Witcher 3, you should get that expansion. It's good stuff. Anyway, the next are vampires.
I
This
feel
is-
like I know a lot about vampires.
Yes. Now, these are a little bit different because these are actually people who in their lives were wicked or awful people.
Oh.
And then they will come back to drink blood. Bad people. There is a story that's pretty well known called Croglin Grange. It's a vampire legend that took place in Cumberland, England. It's thought to have begun around 1890-ish. So, the story goes that a home was rented out to a woman and two brothers, Amelia Edward and Michael Cranswell. During one summer, Amelia was trying to sleep when a strange creature appeared at her window and began picking out the lead that surrounded one of the window panes. which we won't get into, lead poisoning and stuff. We'll
Right.
just gloss over that. When he finally had a large enough gap, he reached his hand into the window and unlatched it and let himself in. He was described as having a brown face and flaming eyes. It's said that he then bit her in the throat, and when her brothers came into the room, the monster was gone. One brother tried to help the sister, the other went after the creature. Apparently she survived this, and the three took a trip to Switzerland. And when they returned, the creature also returned. And at this time, the brother shot it in the leg and then was able to track it to a vault in the local cemetery. They waited until the next day to enter the vault, where they did find the body, and it did have a fresh wound where it had been shot, so they lit it on fire, burned the corpse.
As you would.
Yes, exactly. So that's one of the first stories of this particular, for some reason he's a very famous vampire.
Okay.
Something. We also have hobs. These are cute little household spirits who do chores for you overnight, but you are not to offend them.
How do I get some of these hobs?
Great question. Move to England, but watch out for the boggarts.
Step one.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Maybe they live in New Zealand, so when we move to New Zealand, they'll be there for us.
Perfect.
Yeah. Love
Just
it.
put that out into the universe now that
Yeah.
we need some hobs waiting for us when we
Exactly.
get to New Zealand.
The great thing about hobs is that all you have to do to keep them happy is to give them food, like a bowl of cream or a small cake. The biggest thing is you do not want to offend them by giving them clothing.
Oh. So they're house elves?
Exactly, yes.
But like happy house elves.
yeah.
Hermione would be so happy.
Yes, maybe she... No, this is way off the timeline. Never mind. We're not gonna invest in that theory. Besides, we're done with conspiracy theories.
Right. That was the last week.
Jeez.
Or
2 weeks ago, I think. Yeah. There is a short story. An older woman was living alone in her home. She had a really hard time keeping up with chores, and a hob came in, and he was doing chores for her. However, she offended him by giving him a hat and an apron, and he left, and she grew weaker and weaker, having to take care of the house by herself. Mm-hmm. There are dwarves, of course.
Of course.
Very Tolkien-esque. They're quite greedy. They usually live underground. They don't like humans. In
fair.
English, yeah. I'm not gonna argue that. They are often short and ugly, which, calling them short and ugly might be part of the reason they don't like humans.
Right.
What do I know? There is also something called a knucker, and this is not to be confused with knockers because they're very different. These are water dragons or sea serpents.
Ooh.
And these live in deep holes near the edges of ponds and rivers called knucker holes. And a knucker hole is believed to infinitely go down. There's no bottom. They feed on livestock and occasionally people. There's a legend that one of these knuckers outwitted a local farmer's son. He was offended, so he decided he would cook a huge pie with poison in it. And he would bring it out, and the knucker ate it, as well as the horse and cart that he had brought it on. And then it died. Which also the boy died after that, perhaps because he used the poison to make the pie. I think in the end, really, the boy is the loser in all this, because first he got outsmarted by a dragon and then he got killed.
Right.
Nothing good really came of it.
Just a poor dead dragon.
Yeah. Sad.
I mean, sometimes you just have to sacrifice your livestock to
Once in a while,
dragons. They're very hungry.
They are. And, I mean, if you befriend one, they could be awesome.
Yeah.
They should have talked to their local...
probably know how to find treasure.
druid. Yeah.
Or they have treasure already.
Right. Right.
Right.
You're right about that. Why do I always do an offensive accent in every episode? Cal, we're going to get canceled. I'm going to get canceled. You'll still be fine. You can still talk about your houseplants.
It'll just be me.
Camping hacks.
We'll just have to make sure you don't say anything offensive after that.
I'm I'm sure that's totally doable.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the editing is for, right?
Exactly. So, there are also giants. Pretty much what you'd think of. They're often not super smart. Mm-hmm. The fun thing about giants is that they're often linked to the natural phenomena of England. And actually, we have our own in Michigan, Paul Bunyan.
Oh, yes.
He created, I believe, our lakes for us. And there's several others. I just, of course, can't remember them off the top of my head. But the giants are the ones who have created natural mountains and ditches and things like that, which I think are kind of fun. We're almost wrapping up. We also have the Green Children of Woolperth. So the story goes that one day these two children wandered up to a village. There was a girl and a boy. They could not speak English, and all they would eat was raw meat. So this village did, in fact, take them in, and they had green skin.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was hoping there was a tie.
Yeah, that's potentially the most important part. They dyed them
like weird meat-eating children. You have to be green.
We need to know that it's
stand out.
We want to know you're coming. You smell. If you ate raw meat, you could only eat
so. Yeah.
Anyway, so they did take these children in and decided to baptize them, which was basically the practice at the time. Mm-hmm. When they did so, the little boy did not survive. I don't know what kind of baptism they were going for, but I think I don't think they drowned him. That's not really what the story went, but I don't know for sure.
Not really sure.
I cannot confirm nor deny. So the little girl did survive, and as she grew, she first started to learn English, but also her green tint started to fade away. Mm-hmm. And when she could speak, she told that she and her brother had come from a land that was entirely green and had no sun. Really strange.
Super strange.
There wasn't a whole lot more on it, but they reminded me of Game of Thrones.
Okay.
So, Now this last one is something. This is another black dog.
Do you think it had some, like, black dogs, black cats?
Yeah,
like
maybe.
Maybe
like
some sort of
bad
tie.
luck or
and somehow, like, dogs got away from it, but cats are still believed to be bad luck for some reason.
That could be.
I don't know.
It could also be, like, evolutionary. Maybe they had a lot of, like, rabid street dogs that were black because they were bred through and...
Or wolves, like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
It's something.
It's really strange. They had a lot of them. But this one is called the Black Shuck. He's a one-eyed spectral hound. He's black, of course, and he's horse size, so he's really large. One of the most notable reports of the Black Shuck is in Bungay and Blytheburg churches. There are two churches in 1577. It said that this Black Shuck burst through the doors of the Holy Trinity Church like a clap of thunder. He ran up the middle aisle. He went past the huge congregation. He did kill a man and a boy by causing the steeple to collapse through the roof. And as he left, he swiped at the door and left scorch marks on the door, which you can actually see to this day.
Really?
I did see a photo of it. It's pretty convincing. I mean, it literally could have been anything, but it's quite a fun theory.
Right.
And you can also fight him in the Assassin's Creed Valhalla game. He's one of the mini bosses.
Zach likes that game.
Oh, yeah, so you'll probably see him. Or he's already fought him.
Probably. I think he's put that one.
Despite that, he's pretty cool. And the photos of the door are pretty cool. Who knows what left them, really, honestly.
In
but
1577.
Yeah. So those are my English folklore. I hope they brought you some more folklore-ish dopamine. I do have a really fun one for next week as well. I'm super excited to tell you guys about. And I actually have no idea what Brie is talking about today.
So, I am talking about what I call feral landscaping.
That's right. I didn't know what you were talking about.
I kind of made up the word for our own situation. And I'll be honest with you, it kind of came from a book. Because That's what I do. So it started, during COVID and in 2020, we got to do what everybody else did, and we were stuck home for a while. And of course, we made our yard really pretty, and we, did patio or blocks down by the fire pit and made a cool patio area, and we re-mulched everything. And we did all those things that most people do every year. And then I got another job. I added a second job again in the fall of 2020. And so when spring came around again, basically I just had to make a decision on how to spend my time. And at that point in our lives, what had to go was gardening and landscaping. We had tried to do container gardens before. That year, I think we did do a raised bed with just a few like tomato plants and zucchini plants, which I never got to eat because we had a raccoon that ate all of them. Or no, did not eat all of them, would come in and take one bite out of every tomato and leave the rest. So between that and just not having any time, I gave up on my yard. It was just something I had to take off my list. And surprisingly enough, nothing bad happened. Like, we just moved on with our lives. My husband still maintained like the little bit of lawn that we have, and he has a leaf blower, so getting the leaves out of there was important because we live in the middle of the woods. I don't think I even picked up a rake that year. I was very busy. The following summer was just as busy, but I began to notice that by not gardening, our yard and our plants had kind of like come alive. And it, again, started from a book. The book is actually called The Change, I think. Yes, The Change by Kristen Miller. And it was a really weird book. It's kind of a middle-aged fantasy true crime novel.
I assumed that this book was a gardening book.
Nope. You would think so, but no. No, it is actually a midlife crisis fantasy book.
Okay.
So the change in this story kind of relates to almost like menopause age. And it's 3 women, and they're all going through something. Like, 2 of them are getting divorced, and one of them, her husband had died. And as they approach this like middle-aged menopause age, they discover they have magic powers. Like, one of them becomes very, very strong. She's basically like a brick wall. One of them can see ghosts, which is like a family thing that she knew was coming and just starts up at this certain age. But the third woman, her magic power is plants and gardening. So she has the power to not only make her plants kind of come alive, but like increase their growth. And her, because it's a true crime novel, also not a true crime, but there's like a crime story in it. Of course, she grows plants that are deadly or toxic or can, vines that can grab people. So I read this book, and it's an okay book, to be honest. If you're into the crime novel, bad men, women power kind of story, it was good. But I really latched onto this woman that could like create these plants and grow these plants, especially when I started noticing that by letting my yard just go feral for a year, all of a sudden we had new plants. And strangely enough, one of them was foxglove, which is very, very pretty, but also very, very dangerous.
Yes.
They actually use it in a heart medication. They can use it to make heart medication. So if you ingest foxglove, it can basically stop your heart. So if my husband dies of a heart attack anytime soon, please don't investigate me. It definitely was not me with the foxglove in the yard. But it's very pretty. It's a gorgeous flower. It's purple. Yeah. And it came up out of nowhere. We had lived in the house.
And, yeah. I had some. You stole my foxglove, didn't you?
I did.
Mine has not come back up.
My magic plant powers stole it and made it pop up in my yard. Because we had lived there for a couple of years already and had never noticed these gorgeous, vibrant flowers that popped up that year. I also noticed where we live, we have to have propane. So we have that big, ugly propane tank. And there is a bush in front of it that had been there since we moved in, and I had been kind of maintaining it, that has these beautiful yellow bushy flowers. we think maybe it's some sort of like Japanese rose.
Okay.
But it's these long vines and these beautiful flowers, and it just exploded in that year that I didn't take care of it and started camouflaging our propane tank.
Nice.
And at the same time, all these raspberry vines came up out of nowhere. So now I have this corner of my yard that is completely like these crazy thorny vine flowers, which is an incredible habitat for the birds that I love so much. So now I have all these new birds that are not only loving the protection that they get from these bushes and the beautiful fruit they get to eat that I never get any of because the birds eat all the raspberries before I can get there.
Similar to your greedy raccoon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically just feeding wildlife at this point.
That's kind of you.
Yeah, it's practicing my druidry that I'm eventually going to get to.
Yes.
It's also a great place for my chickens to hide, and it's a very sandy ground over there, and they love their dust baths. So my chickens will gravitate towards that area and take their dust bath and then hang out and hide from aerial predators under these vines. I also had raspberry bushes start up and take over under where my bird feeders are now, which I'm assuming is some sort of like bird dropping transfer seed situation.
It's best if we don't think too hard about those things.
But it's another bird sanctuary protection area. Then I started noticing that in my actual flower beds that I had been maintaining all these years, all these things I had been pulling up that I thought were weeds, we have a bunch of wild mint out there.
Oh, cool.
We had wild garlic and wild onions. We have all these beautiful flowers that come up, and a lot of them are useful herbs or plants that one of them, it is a weed, but I can feed it to my chickens. It used to be like thought of as a lettuce. So now my yard is actually creating plants that I can either, I could put wild mint in my tea, or I can feed my chickens with this weird weed lettuce plant that comes up. I get mini daisies. My whole yard just exploded with all of these things I had never seen before because I was probably either mulching over them or pulling them up before I realized what they were. So this year we have evening primrose that came out of nowhere. I've never had it. I've never noticed it in my yard before. And
how long has it been now since you started this?
I gave up in 2021.
So
would have been the
second year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're still finding new things. So our feral gardening or our feral landscape started because I didn't have time. And I kind of, between the book and myself, it was kind of just like a word I was using to explain why my yard looked very unkempt, but how I had turned it into a positive thing because now all of this cool stuff was happening.
Oh, wait. This totally ties into working with your downfalls.
Yes.
You didn't have time, and you ended up with this kick butt garden.
Yeah.
It's like your ADHD.
Yeah. My
Love
ADHD showed me a way to still benefit from not having time and not pushing myself to be miserable and work on all this stuff when really, in reality, it doesn't matter. None of my friends are judging me over what my yard looks like. I live 1,000 feet off the road, so it's not like anybody's complaining about it. And I didn't overstress myself trying to make it perfect.
You ended up with something even better than if you had worked your butt off and spent all that time and wasted all the time because you had a kid growing up that you would have missed out.
And he was not the type of kid that was going to be out there helping me weed my garden by any means. So then when this podcast started, and I don't remember what we were talking about, probably my houseplants, but I started thinking about talking about my feral landscaping. But when I started Googling it, it is a thing that exists, that people do. These days they're calling it ungardening or rewilding. It's mostly taking on a more like natural yard and it's a big movement. But I found some really cool things, and so we started doing that because there wasn't time. A lot of other people are choosing these more native landscapes or unwilding or rewilding or ungardening, either because they're hippies and they care less about green grass and more about native plants and having gardens, or because of space concerns. You mentioned in your topic that we're, our urban sprawl and how much land we're taking up as humans is just incredible. So all this green grass, all these beautiful lawns that we've been focusing on for the last 50 years are just wasted space. So people are starting to make them into gardens. So instead of driving through a nice neighborhood and having a bunch of green lawn, you might see some raised beds or some in-bed or in-ground gardens.
I've seen on TikTok, sorry to interrupt, I've seen wildflower lawns, which are incredible, and then Ryan and I personally are trying to do clover lawn.
Yes.
We aren't, well, the time thing, really, we aren't ripping up our existing lawn. We're just going to try and clover patches at a time, and then maybe we will start tearing it up. But we just want to feed the bees. It's really a big thing for us.
And that is huge. Not killing our pollinators anymore. So getting away from all the pesticides that are needed to have a lush green grass. Getting away from all the water that's required to have a lush green grass. So yes, the wildflower gardens are huge. Even in some cities are starting to encourage building these native wildflower gardens in yards just to bring back our pollinators, which gets into my next week's topic also, when I talk about monarch butterflies. So the clover lawn, I read a lot about the clover lawn. That is something we've also considered, and we're kind of doing it like you did and in our own way, where we just kind of let the clover that we have take over. So we mow a lot less because we let the clover go to seed and spread those seeds, but we also just have kind of a mossy lawn now anyway because we're so shaded. And I did research this year about moss lawns, and they're fine. I don't know what it is about when we were growing up, or people think moss is gross or moldy or people are allergic to it, but it's not. It's just another plant.
Personally, I don't like wearing shoes at all. So anything my yard can do to make it soft and fluffy for me is fantastic.
Yes.
And moss is, judge me if you want, but one of the most satisfying things to step on.
It's soft and squishy. It just feels nice.
Yes.
I don't know why. I think people just have this idea that it's gross or it's going to make them itchy or something.
It's also beautiful.
It is, and it doesn't. In one of my jobs, when I used to clean houses, one of the people I cleaned for, she would pour the bottom dregs of their beer. She had a moss area in front of her front porch, and she would pour the beer on it, and it would help the moss grow. So you're not wasting a bunch of water. The only downside to moss is it's a very small root system, so it's not very stable. So if you have erosion issues or water issues where you need something that's really grabbing into the ground so it doesn't get washed away, moss might not be such a good option.
We have a slopey yard. We have a very slopey yard, so I don't know if we could maintain a moss.
And it's really easy for animals to rip up. So
the
dogs are really hard to have moss lawns because every time they run, they're basically digging it up. So right now we have kind of a hybrid lawn clover moss situation, but it feels really nice. It's just as easy to play catch on than any other lawn. And
you guys aren't worried about moles or birds or wild animals ruining your lawn because that's what
care
it's
if it's pristine.
Yeah.
I don't, I guess there's probably downsides to having moles, but as far as I know, it's mostly just a lawn problem. And they
flowers.
Eat bugs.
Yeah. And does the moss harvest little bugs for your chickens?
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like that would be a huge benefit with your chickens.
Yes. Well, and the grass does too.
Sure.
But that's actually one of the benefits to chickens is they're out eating all of those creepy crawlies, all the ticks. We actually notice a lot less ticks when we're free-ranging our chickens versus when we're keeping them locked up.
I have to go buy 1 million chickens.
And then you can do the chicken wars on TikTok.
Yes.
Have you seen those?
I haven't.
You should, and you will laugh forever.
I see a lot of people dressing their chickens up on TikTok, and you're so lucky I don't send you every single TikTok.
That's all my TikTok will be, is just chickens in outfits.
Chickens in costumes. Hands, feet.
The hands are pretty hilarious.
hats are fantastic.
I'm gonna get my chickens some hats.
If anyone would like to knit some chicken hats, Bree is absolutely willing to take some.
Mm-hmm.
I will as well. Mine are going to be hobbits.
That would be perfect. So we started, some people are getting away from lawns. They're moving to clover lawns, which is less water, it's less upkeep, it's less mowing. There are benefits to that because, mowing is still using fossil fuels and gas and putting whatever into the air. Plus it takes time and effort.
Yeah.
Out here where we live, we don't pay for water, but if you live in the city or live somewhere where you have to pay for water, then sometimes you're paying just to have to water your grass. When I show houses, I actually point out, if there's an underground or if there's a leftover well for houses that are in the city that can be used for sprinkling, because then you're not paying to water your lawn.
Which can get crazy expensive, especially if you have like a double lot or something in the city.
Yeah. And a lot of cities require upkeep of your grass. So I'll get to that in a minute. Other reasons is pesticides. I mentioned, you need a lot less pesticides when you're not having a green lawn. And the more we learn about pesticides and the more we learn about things like Roundup and how it causes cancer, then it's definitely good to get away from those pesticides. But some of the coolest things I learned is when you are doing a more natural landscaping, you can be a lot more lazy about it. So it's actually good to leave your leaves in the fall and leave them out all winter. People don't, because if you leave your leaves on your grass all winter, it'll kill your grass. But if you're not worried about that, it makes a good compost, it makes a good mulch, it breaks down into the ground, and there's all kinds of benefits. Plus it houses all of our insects and our pollinators. So if you read about all this natural landscaping, people will tell you not to rake at the end of the season and not to rake until like May or early June sometimes, depending on where you live, because you want to keep that warmth in those leaves on the ground for as long as you can for all the bugs.
I do that for my flower beds. Ryan takes care of the yard. I don't pay a lot of attention to that, but that's something really good to keep in mind for our clover. But I leave them in my flower beds so that the really cold winter won't just freeze up my stuff.
Yeah. And it helps your bugs, your pollinators, your flowers. It adds nutrients into the soil because the leaves break down. You're using less fertilizer because you're not caring about the grass. So if you do want to get into a more native or natural or ungardening or rewilding, something really important to focus on is making sure you're choosing native plants. So that is the big thing that has been a problem, especially with previous years of gardening or lawns, is not only have we brought in like strains of grass that aren't native to certain areas, so then they're harder to grow and they require more care and more upkeep and more stuff, but then we're inviting invasive species into our areas, and it's taking out and choking out the native plants that live there and ruining, what's supposed to be there. You're bringing in plants that maybe our pollinators can't use or is bad for our situation. So you want to make sure you're researching native plants. You want to focus on the plants that can help our pollinators, so the wildflowers, things with blooms. You want to try to focus on maybe plants that have multiple uses. So not only are they just pretty flowers, but maybe some of them are edible, or it's mint that you can use in your tea, which I also did learn that mint is actually incredibly invasive and will grow very quickly. So you have to be careful with your mint or it'll take over your entire yard. And just doing the research on what plants can be eaten or made in tea or all of that.
Dandelion can be turned into tea.
Dandelions have a ton of uses if you look at them. And it's, for some reason, someone at some point decided they were an ugly weed because they ruined green lawns. And we've been destroying them ever since. But they make a good tea. Dandelion root, I think, is medicinal in some ways.
And it's so fun when they're puffy to blow on them and make a wish.
Yeah, they're good luck. You can make wishes with them. You can make wine with them. There's a dandelion wine.
Dang, yeah.
incredible. And like I said, all the stuff I used to pull up as weeds is like mint and lettucey stuff that you could put in salads. Like 80% of it is edible. And most people just toss it out or get rid of it, or they don't plant it. You do want to make sure you do really good research with that, though, because there are still a lot of toxic plants that are native, such as foxglove.
Yes.
And even, I think, the evening primrose, if not done correctly, can be dangerous.
Lily of the Valley is really bad for your pets. Mm-hmm. I don't know human-wise, but I know it can kill a dog.
I learned today, and again, I'll talk about it with my monarchs too, but milkweed is actually toxic.
Really?
Yeah, which I definitely remember playing with as a kid.
Absolutely.
So I'm very surprised by this, but it's why monarchs are actually toxic. You should not eat monarch butterflies.
Dang it.
Just so you know.
That's what I was going to suggest we have for lunch.
Oh. Now we're going to have to come up with a new plan.
Dang it. I love that. I think that's so cool. I love the idea. I think I've noticed that there are quite a few websites out there that you can find your natural habitats.
There are millions of websites. Probably not millions, but a lot of websites.
I'd believe you if you said millions.
That will either give you options of what native plants are good for your area and where to buy them, or there's even landscaping companies now that focus on doing natural landscaping and working with native species. There's a man in Holland that started a company. They call him the Doomgrass Man. I think the company is Old Paths or something, OLD, and he raises and harvests dune grass, and then goes into areas like down to the beach, and he goes into places like that and places all this dune grass to help with the erosion control and making sure that our dunes aren't being lost.
That's amazing, because I know that's a huge problem.
Yeah, we lost a whole set of stairs at the end of this road because erosion and the water level got so high. And now that it's down, we've replaced the stairs, but we have to come up with a way to fix this erosion so that our stairs don't get washed away again.
And our dunes protect us from a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, our tiny little area, the weather that we don't see based on our dunes is incredible. They protect us quite well. You do want to focus on finding plants that are native to your area, that are safe for your family members if you have dogs or cats or kids that you don't think you can trust around these dangerous plants, or at least put them in areas where they won't be accessible to those types of people or animals. And really, I still actually just have a ton of information to talk about, so I think I'm going to wrap this up here. And actually next week I'm going to talk more about more benefits of the natural landscaping, how to actually have nice landscaping while still keeping it more natural and in this rewilding idea of things. And then I also really want to talk kind of extensively about my in-laws and what they've done with their yard and what their transition has looked like, because when I met them, they were very much a lush green grass kind of family, and they're not anymore, and it's gorgeous. So I will actually probably share pictures of that too next week.
Perfect. Okay, I love it. So everybody is on a cliffhanger.
You have to wait for next week to find out good things about native gardening and stuff.
Can't wait for that.
I love stuff.
So we still don't have an outro.
Right.
But we do want to thank everyone.
Struggle through it every
Midwestern,
week because we don't want to stop talking.
Midwestern Yik Yak. And
we'll have to invite Jessica's dogs on to be guest stars sometime.
I don't know if anybody's heard, but my dog has been a part of this conversation quite actively.
She adds a lot to the conversation.
She's
if
pretty
only
wise.
we could understand her.
Yeah. So, we thank you so much for joining us on our 5th episode of Dungeons and Dopamine. We'll see you next week.